Hey guys, it's Jess. I am long overdue for doing any kind of book review. I haven't done one in such a long time. I think I'm out of practice, but the only way to get over the hump is just to do the very first one. So here I am. Let's get started. So today I'm going to be reviewing Bossypants by Tina Fey. Usually in a book review, the first thing I would do is show you the cover of the book, but I read this book months ago and I gave the book back to the library, so I don't have it anymore. So I'm going to show you the cover now. So this is the cover for Bossypants by Tina Fey, and I just love this concept. I love the man arms from behind her. I think it gives the cover just such a whimsical, funny quality. And apparently, she said on the David Letterman show that this was a completely impromptu idea, that they had just been doing a basic portrait photo of her, and then this guy from the crew randomly came up behind her as a joke, and they were like, "That's it. That's what we want to do," and that's how the man arms got on the cover. And it's really funny because apparently her dad just hates this cover, and he had told her that she completely ruined her book based on this cover alone. Which, I mean, you gotta love it. I mean, it's Tina Fey, and she still has her dad going, "Yeah, I wouldn't do that if I were you." I just thought that was too funny. So, Bossypants is basically a collection of essays that Tina's written about her life. And of course, it starts with her childhood and her family and how she got interested in performing and what she was like as a high schooler and a college student. And then, of course, it goes later into her life when she started doing Saturday Night Live and 30 Rock and the whole Sarah Palin thing, and etc. And it's interesting because she doesn't really write about necessarily really major events in her life. Sometimes she does, but sometimes they're just memorable events. So it's an interesting mix of little stories, basically, about her. I should preface this video by saying I love Tina Fey. I think she's a rock star. I think she's so refreshingly real, if that makes sense. I love that she doesn't buy into her own hype or into her own press. You see her in interviews and she's just really down to earth. She seems like someone I know. And it's just really exciting to watch someone like that who's truly talented and who's just, trying to make a living doing what they love. And it's fun to see those kind of people rise to success as opposed to those who, are sort of infamous for undeserved reasons. So plus she is just so funny and she finds humor in, the little things, and I love that. She's a little bit raunchy. I love her. I love her. And so I was really, really excited to read a book by her because I love biographies or autobiographies, because we think we know these people, especially famous people, because they're in our lives and, we see them everywhere in magazines and on television and in movies, and we think we really know them. And yet, of course, there's so much that we don't see and so much that we don't know, that reading these books really feels like you get to have a secret look at their life and inside their head. So it's one of the many reasons why I love biographies, but I love getting that extra peek into their lives. So I was really excited to read this book. So this book definitely did not disappoint. It is just as funny as you hope it will be. She's so super, super smart. And I guess I already knew that because as a comedian, you have to be able to think on your feet, so you have to be really smart. But she's just so witty and so clever, and it's really cool because you don't just get to hear about her life, which is really interesting, and she tells you some sort of amazing stories, and there's some really moving parts. She talks about her dad, which is a really great chapter, and that all of that is just really cool. But then she also has sort of social commentary, sort of spliced in, where she talks about just issues that she wants to talk about. She talks about like breastfeeding, and she talks about people photoshopping her magazine covers, and all of that kind of stuff. So it's interesting to hear her side of it. So it was really cool to hear just sort of her take on things. She's very down to earth. She's self-deprecating. She's not at all afraid to make fun of herself, especially her adolescent years. I mean, I think most of us relate to that awkward time anyway, and of course for her it was no exception. And it's just, it's those times are just funny to read about anyway, in everyone's life. So yeah, so many great things about this book, so many things that I really enjoyed. The only real complaint that I have is that it just wasn't really enough. I mean, part of the, appeal was that you got to read these little essays by her where she sort of focuses on, a little tidbit of her life, expands on it, and then she just moves on really quickly. So you get really invested in, a certain part of her life, and then she jumps, in the next chapter to a completely different time in her life. So it was a little bit confusing sometimes, where we were chronologically in her life. Plus, you felt a little bit shortchanged, and I use that word very lightly, because you really got into what she was talking about, and then all of a sudden she would be done with that topic and moving on to the next. So it felt a little bit uneven, a little choppy, but I mean, still, if my biggest complaint is that I didn't get to read enough, I mean, that's a pretty light complaint. So, final verdict, I really did enjoy this book. I loved learning more about Tina Fey's life. I loved, sort of getting to hear her talk completely from her own perspective. I certainly learned a lot more about her than I ever knew, and, nothing in the book changes how I feel about her at all. She is just as smart, just as charming as you think she would be. My only complaint is that the essays were a little weird for me. They weren't as effective as hearing, a whole autobiography from her would be. But, again, that is totally her prerogative. That's just my personal preference. But in the end, this is a really solid autobiography. If you love her, you're going to love this book. I give this book a solid 4-star rating. I really enjoyed it, and you should definitely go pick it up because Tina Fey rocks.